we started a new series called Walking by Faith. And if you missed it last week, man, I want to encourage you. Go back and watch last week's message. You can find it on our YouTube page. And it was just kind of an introduction to what we're going to be walking out in the next several weeks, really leading up to Easter. And this idea of walking by faith, it's really kind of what we've already begun doing this morning as we've been looking at what we're asking God to do in our lives as we seek after him through prayer, and as we recognize the things that he does and has done in our lives. It just builds up our faith that much more. And so last week we talked about this topic of walking by faith, and I'm going to be reading out of Hebrews chapter 11 this morning, and a lot of this was covered last week in last week's message, but I just want to talk briefly this morning on the topic of walking by faith and what that looks like. So Hebrews chapter 11 verses 1 through 4 is where we're going to hang out today. And it says this. It says, "Now faith is confidence in what we hope for, and assurance about what we do not see." And this is what the ancients were commended for. What that means is that our faith is really putting trust in our unknown, but trusting that God has control over the unknown. It's having a belief that God is going to fill in the gaps of our shortcomings. That as we are obedient and we step out and we do the things that he's called us to do, that all of the question marks that would prevent us from taking those steps, he already has in control. It's confidence knowing that God's going to bridge that gap. And it goes on in verse 3 to say, "By faith we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what we see was not made out of what was visible." And again, it's this idea that God takes care of all of the mystery of life, that all of the unknowns and all of the question marks we don't have to carry on our own, but that God literally takes care of it. And last week I said that this idea that God took what wasn't visible and created with that. And I said something, and Kent came up to me after service and just kind of expanded on it even beyond. I was just like, oh, what you said is so much better than what I said. What I said was, God took nothing and he turned it into something. What a beautiful thing. Kent came up to me after service and he says, "Michael, you were so close." He said, God didn't take something and take nothing and turn it into something. He took nothing and turned it into everything. He took nothing and he turned it into everything. And if he has control over everything like that, now what makes us think that he doesn't have control over our situation and over our life and over our needs and over our concerns? And so we're given this picture of God being in control in the idea of faith. And then we're given an example. And the rest of Hebrews chapter 11 is giving an example of who these ancients are who were commended for their faith. And the first person on the list, the writer of Hebrews goes all the way back to Genesis. He skips over Adam and Eve, which is kind of messed up, but he goes to their kids. And he rewinds all the way back to the very beginning, and he says, "By faith, Abel brought a better offering than Cain did. By faith, he was commended as righteous, when God spoke well of his offerings. And by faith, Abel still speaks, even though he's dead." And that last sentence just really captivated me. And so So the author of Hebrews is referring to Abel as being dead, yes, in the sense that he was dead long before this book was ever written, but also if you look at the story of Cain and Abel, he was killed for his trouble. He was literally the first person in history who had been killed. And if you look at his story in Genesis, you can find his story in Genesis chapter 4. It says, "Now Abel kept flocks, and Cain worked the soil. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord. And Abel also brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. The Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering he did not look on favor. So Cain was very able, and his face was downcast." And so what we have here happening is these very first people that were coming and bringing offering to the Lord. And if you do a little bit of digging, you can see the sacrifice associated between Cain and Abel's giving. And Cain brought the fruits from the ground, and Abel brought the fats from his meat. And God looked at Abel and said, your sacrifice is good and valuable and worth it. And he looks at Cain and he says, hey, you're not quite there. And we get this picture between giving from the heart versus the giving out of ritual, giving out of routine, giving out of obligation. And if you rewind just a couple of weeks, we talked about cleaning the outside of the cup, but the inside of the cup's still rotten. And there's, again, this picture of I'm going through the motions and I'm doing the process of what God's asking me to do, but my heart's not fully in it. My heart's not fully committed to it. And so what we have is this separation of giving out of the fullness of wanting to be obedient and follow after what God has, and the giving out of, I guess I'm supposed to give, so I'm going to give something. And what we see in the story of Cain and Abel is Abel, although he was the one who was favored by God, is literally killed for his troubles. His brother gets ticked off and throws a rock at his head or something. And it's really hard sometimes because, like, when you do the right thing, you get rocks thrown at you, right? And what we see back in Hebrews chapter 4 is that the writer of Hebrews is telling us that Abel brought the better sacrifice, and he was commended for his faith, and he was made righteous through his faith. And by faith, Abel's story continues to speak even though he's dead. That even though the story of Abel is about this long in the book of Genesis, that echoes for generations from his faithfulness still speaks. We have a word for that. It's called legacy. That the legacy of Abel moved on. Why? Because of his faith. Because of his faith. And you see later in the book of Hebrews, we're going to get into this in the next couple of weeks, this idea of God fulfilling promises through generations. That God is literally the God of generations. He says he's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Right? He's the God of generations. And that some of the things that were promised to Abraham were fulfilled through Jacob. That some of the things that were promised to Moses were fulfilled after Moses' death through Joshua entering into the promised land. Is this idea that legacy lives on. That legacy lives on through faithfulness. That brings me to the idea of what is the legacy of Discovery Church going to be? What is the legacy of Discovery Church going to be? And I believe that there are promises that were made to this church that are being fulfilled in our generation, and that there are promises being made to us that are going to be fulfilled through my kids' generation, and that God is going to continue to speak through generation, through generation, through generation, through our church, if we exercise faith and if we exercise obedience. I want to share a little bit of history of Discovery Church. If you're unfamiliar with the history of this church, this is really cool for me. You rewind Discovery Church about 10 years, and that was really the birth of Discovery as we know it today, of 11 years of this church that is kind of modeled to do things different, a lot of unconventional activities, hiking and biking and kayaking and reaching unchurched people in a way that they haven't been reached or maybe they've been neglected. It's a really amazing vision of reaching lost people. But if you rewind even just a bit before then, predating Discovery Church, Discovery Church was known as First Assembly of God of Prescott, Arizona. And when I was Judah's age, my family went to First Assembly of God. And I was baptized in this church when I was close to Judah's age. And throughout the history of the church, there's been different things that have happened and some different ups and downs and some stories that we don't really need to get into. But there is a vision of what Discovery Church is going to be going forward that I believe I was born into, that I didn't even realize in the moment, that when I was baptized at First Assembly of God back in the early 2000s, that God was already mapping out the future for generations of this church. And we're going to have legacy of having an impact on our community that's going to blow our minds. I really believe that. I believe that we're going to be reaching a demographic in Prescott that has been neglected for years and years and years. That we're going to reach unchurched people that need to hear the love of God, and that we're going to have tangible impact on God. We've been talking about this for the last year since we've been here, right? You've heard us talk a lot about this, a lot about being obedient and stepping out in faith. And we told you that we believe that this was going to be a year of blessing, that we believe this was going to be a year of harvest, and that God was going to honor our faithfulness, not just from the leadership, but from y'all who have been a part of this church, who have faithfully given your time and your energy and your Saturdays and your money and your Sunday afternoons and all the setup and all the teardown and all the sacrifice that you have put into this church. I believe God is getting ready to honor that in a really, really powerful way. And we are on the brink of being able to break through in a kind of way where we're going to have a bigger impact on our community than we've ever had before. And things are just going to get better. So I have a major announcement that we've been teasing for the last couple of weeks. And the really cool, amazing thing that our church has been blessed with is there is another church in town that is donating their cushioned chairs to Discovery Church. They are donating their cushioned chairs, so we're not going to have to sit in these metal chairs anymore. And so we talked to the school, and we said, hey, we got a bunch of these chairs that we'd like to bring into the school to set up so that our people can be more comfortable. And the school said, no, you can't put the chairs in the school. And so we actually had to go out and find a place to put the chairs in. And we found a building. We found a home for Discovery Church. It's on Gurley Street. and it's prime location. There's a nice parking lot in the front. There's a fenced-in area in the back. It's big enough. We have 3 classrooms for our kids, so we're gonna have a safe, clean place for our kids to be able to play. That we're gonna have a space that we're gonna be able to set up for our younger kids, so that they're gonna be able to play, in a place for moms to be able to hang out and sit and be and listen to the sermon and play with their kids. Our sanctuary is gonna have padded cushion seats. We're not gonna, yeah, you can clap for that. This is amazing. We're gonna have a sound system that just is set up. We're not gonna have to plug in plugs and unplug plugs every week. And here's the best part. The best part is that we are going to have access to that building 24/7. So if we want to do something, we're not going to have to reach out to the public school district of, hey, we want to do a Saturday night thing. Can we get in there? And then they tell us no. So we're going to be able to do worship nights and worship evenings. We're going to be able to do nights where we pursue after God. We're going to have a space where we can host midweek services. We're going to have a place where we can have Bible studies. One of the first events that we're planning on doing is a family movie night, where you just come with your blankets and your bean bags and we watch a movie in the building. We're going to have a space where we can reach out to our community and bring them in. We're gonna have a space where we can have clubs for high schoolers to come and have a safe space to not have to be out doing worldly things. We're gonna have a space to where we can host different events. We're gonna have a space where we can feed hungry people. And we're gonna have a space where we can literally do God's work. And it's going to be incredible. And I believe that we're going to be blessed by it. And so you can get, honestly, guys, this is so incredibly exciting. And so we're going to have some more details about what that's going to look like. But we've got to nail down exact dates of when we're going to be able to move in. It looks like it's probably going to be April or May that we're going to be able to make that move. We're praying that we can have our first service in there Easter Sunday. That is our target. We don't know if it's going to happen, but we're stepping out in faith that God is going to do that. And so I have a dream when it comes to a church that we want to be a good steward of the resources that have been given to us, that we're paying for. We don't got a free building. We got to pay our bills. But for the space that is available to us, I have a dream. I've shared this with some of you, to have a church that has more traffic Monday through Friday than we have cars in the parking lot on Sunday morning. Why? Because why would we have a space that sits empty 6 days a week? Why would we have a space that sits empty 6 days a week? And so we're going to utilize this space. We're going to let homeschool groups come and have their kids play on our kids' equipment and do their homeschool homework and do their things there. We're going to actively be working on putting together a youth group. We're going to be doing young adults ministry. We're going to be doing Bible studies. We're going to use our space to bless our community. And I believe as we pursue after blessing God's people, that God's going to bless us. And so this is a big step of faith for our church community. This is a big step of faith for where we're going and what we're going to do next. And we're making this step of faith because we believe in you. We believe that you guys are going to rally behind the direction that God's going, and you're going to push this thing forward. We believe that the finances are going to increase so that we don't have to ever stress or worry about paying our bills. I believe that we're never going to have a conversation about whether we can afford something or not. I believe that because I believe in you guys having the drive and the want and the ability to invest in the future. I believe that we're never going to have a shortage of volunteers because you guys are going to want to be a part of what God's doing. And so that in the kids ministry, we're never going to have one person that just lives in the kids room all the time, who misses out on everything, because there's going to be such a desire for everyone is only going to have to serve once every other month because there's so many people that want to do it. We're going to have a worship team that just makes music that just glorifies God. And we're going to just see God use our church to ultimately reach lost people and heal broken people and mend broken lives, because that's what he's called the church to do today. And so we're going to celebrate what God's doing. We're going to celebrate what's going on in our church family. If you have any questions about any of it, how you could help, how you could get involved, what the church is going to need in the next couple of months as we get ready for our move, I'd love to answer any of those questions for you. But guys, today is a celebration. Today is a great day for us to celebrate. And so we've got, I think I counted 11 soups, maybe 12 soups, and they're all different. And they look delicious. And so we're going to take communion, and then we're going to eat, and we're going to just hang out the rest of today. And so how many are glad you came to church this morning? We're so glad that you're here. If you're unfamiliar with how we do communion or why we do communion the way that we do, we believe that communion is so much more than just the elements represented on the table. That communion really is a recognition and a remembrance that God is with us, that he's literally just chilling in this chair, just waiting to connect with us. And these elements are just serve as reminders of what he's already done for us, what he's going to continue to do for us, and how he's ultimately going to overcome everything for us in the future. And so on the night he was betrayed, he took these symbols. He said, the blood represents the blood. The wine represents the blood that was shed for you for your forgiveness. And so if you've been forgiven in this place, we've all been forgiven in this place. The blood is just to remind us there's nothing that you've ever done or that you ever will do that is beyond forgiveness. And so if you need forgiveness in this place, which we all do, the blood serves as a reminder that you have been forgiven, and it's a free gift. And the bread represents the sacrifice that Jesus made on our behalf. His body was literally whipped and broken, and so the broken body represents that, and we believe that that's a symbolic of healing that is available to us. We believe in supernatural divine healing, and so if you need healing in this place over a body part or over a disease or something going on, we want to believe with you as we take communion that God can heal you in an instant today. So I want to invite everyone. Dave, if you want to put a little bit of music on, you can do that. But if I get everyone just come grab a cup and a piece of bread, we're going to take communion together. And as you're getting that, I just want to remind us that communion is not just what we're doing in this moment. Communion is what we're going to spend the rest of this Celebration Sunday doing. It's going to be conversation. It's going to be prayer with one another. It's going to be a meal that we share together. And so as we eat the soup, that's a part of our communion as well. And so as everyone gets their communion pieces, we're going to get ready to do that. I want to make sure everyone gets a minute to reflect on what God is doing. And the Bible teaches that if if your heart's not in the right place, don't take communion. And when they took communion in the New Testament, there was a warning like, hey, don't do this on your own, and there were people getting there, they were getting there early, they were getting drunk on the wine, and then there was no food left over for the people who were getting there late. And really it's a picture of unity within communion. I believe that the church has been called to be unified in communion. And so as we take this, man, I just want to pray a special prayer over our church, that there's a unity in vision, that there's a unity in direction, that there's a unity in decision making, there's a unity in mission, that there's a unity in drive, that there's a unity in worship, and that we can, as a unit, as a united body of believers, be obedient in chasing after what God has next. Now, I believe the best is yet to come. I believe God's going to use our church in an amazing, mighty way, and it's going to be fun. You know, joy is one of the fruits of the Spirit. I think it gets overlooked often. But we should enjoy church together. So I'm going to pray over communion, and then let's have a little bit of fun today. God, thank you for your blood and your body that was broken and shed for us. God, thank you for forgiveness. Thank you for healing. God, I claim healing in Jesus' name over bodies in this room, over bodies that have been seeking after healing for a long time. God, I pray that you heal them right now. We'll give you all the glory. We'll celebrate that you are so good. God, I thank you for the opportunity that our church has to move to a new location where we're going to be able to multiply the type of ministry that we're going to be able to accomplish. And God, I pray that we can be quiet enough to hear your voice and follow after you. God, I pray over all the soup, that it is super healthy and all the sugars turn into vitamins. In Jesus' name, pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. You take the communion elements, and then you are free to go get yourself some food. Glad you guys are here. We're going to put on some music. Let's just hang out and enjoy our church family today.